All of what you're talking about is what I believe is missing when it comes to horses at the top level of the sport.
The horse reads it. They know. They're masters. They are designed by nature to read a predator's thoughts and intentions.
Normally, when you hear any tack, it's because people are like, I can't do dressage without a martingale. And it's so nice that you read that and were like, any tack? None. Hello, welcome back. Season 5, episode 2. I've tried to do that intro 3 times because I couldn't get the right words. How you doing, Miri?
Yeah, good. And the timing was off the first time, so I told Rhi off because I was like, are you leaving me a gap after the hello or not? And it was all a bit complicated.
I was like, no, I'm saying hello to our audience. We did actually, this always happens. We were actually doing our prep before the podcast and we started talking about quite interesting things. So we were like, we must press record. We must begin.
We must stop because people actually do want to hear from us. I'm recording in the most makeshift recording studio ever. It is our new office, what will be our office. But I'm sitting on a beanbag next to the radiator with my microphone propped up on a box, a printer, and my AirPods case. So hopefully everything sounds okay and it doesn't all just fall off midway through. But I'm super excited about this episode today with Mia Rodley.
Me too. You may not know Mia by name, but you may have seen a rider riding in dressage at a competition without a bridle. That is Mia. And she has now set up the first bridleless competition in the UK. It's happening at the end of May at Merist Wood, which is not that far from me and not a million miles from Miri. So I'm going to be going, and
I think I might be going too. So basically, I've started riding Zora bridleless with varying success, and I posted a video of me. It was like a kind of a joke, like saying like this is my first kind of interview as such for trying to get into the bridleless competition. And we've actually just done some research, and actually it's a really cool process to enter. You can't just enter, you actually have to like get accepted. So I've got the post in front of me. It says how to enter the British Bridleless competition. Film an unedited bridleless ride of the class you wish to enter. Show and explain 3 different ways you can stop your horse in emergency, and then email it into them. And I think this is just amazing. Like, this is such a cool thing. And Mia is an amazing horsewoman. Like, I followed her for a long time, and I got to meet her actually at London International, and it was like kindred spirits. Like, we could be sisters, we could have been raised by the same parents kind of feelings, because we just had such aligned views on everything, and we help a lot of people with very similar things. We do things in totally different ways, actually. I think I might be wrong, but I don't know totally her kind of where her training came from or how she began. So I'm just really excited to have this conversation and to understand, where her story began and kind of like how she became the horsewoman she is, because she talks a lot about behaviour and pain and problem horses, doing some air quotes. She does amazing things at Liberty with a whole team of horses. She's like girl boss, inspiration. And I just think it's really cool, to be inspired, have her on and hopefully inspire you guys to maybe look at the way you're training your horses or the way you're interacting with them and how that could be maybe different.
And I like that she's being really practical. I think there's still a big gulf between natural horsemanship and maybe traditional professional riding. And one of the big things that has always been said in defence of having bits and bridles at competitions is, well, it's not safe to just let everybody run around on horses without bits and bridles. And what I like about Mia, and I see the same thing in some people, like I think Ben Atkinson is good at this, is that they're not fluffy about it. They're like, no, like you have to enter with this way, you have to show that you can ride this way. You can't just turn up and hope that you can ride bitless and bridleless. And I think that is really good, because she's taking a very business-like approach to the challenges that the industry are providing and being like, okay, if you're saying it's not safe, I will show you that it can be safe. What next? Mm-hmm. What next? Because this is a way of doing it. So, I was thinking about this conversation this morning. I took Carly out for our first hack alone since we had our little mishap with the car, and we just went around this little route through the woodland that where you don't have to touch any cars at all, actually. It's just some golfers. And he actually got a little bit strong with me for the first time, like ever, especially on my own. I like, there's a bit of the wood that you can kind of it's uphill, so you can kind of canter up it and around the thing, but you have to be a bit careful because it's quite a windy path. So the horses really have to know where they're going, or, you know, at least be following someone that does. And yeah, he was like popped up into canter really nice. And when I say strong, it's like Harley strong. It's not actually strong. But normally he comes back to me from just a voice cue. And today we actually had a little bit of a fight to come back to trot and then to come back to walk. And I thought that was quite surprising. And Miri and I were just chatting about why that might be. Like, was it anxiety? Was it just he's just feeling a bit well? And I think it was initially he's just feeling quite well. And then a little bit later, I felt when he was being strong, he was a little bit anxious, which is fair. But then he came back to me really nicely. And what I have been testing, I'll be really interested to get your point of view on this, because I don't know if you all agree. I just thought, and I know I understand, okay, that you're not meant to mix pressure and release with positive reinforcement like at the same time. And I do think it's important to acknowledge that.
Where did you get
This is
that
what
from?
I learned. Well, it's what I learned at my professional course at Villanova, because what their whole thing is like, it's important that the horse understands the difference in different contexts, because otherwise it's a bit unfair to use pressure and release and then to use positive reinforcement. But my view on it is, as long as your cues are very different and you're not asking at the same time, I think it's okay. What are you going to say on that before I carry on?
I think that we are always using some amount of pressure and release, regardless of whether we're using positive reinforcement or not.
Say more.
So essentially, when you are working with a horse, if you have a rope halter on or anything on, well, actually it doesn't even have to be with nothing on. And it'd be so interesting
right.
to hear Mia with this, because there's always an element of a question and then a release of the question. And then whether there's followed up with a reward or not isn't necessarily, you know, like that's not really relevant. We've just learnt that Rhi's microphone wasn't working, so sorry everyone if the audio is a bit odd to start with. Hopefully it will be dramatically improved.
Apologies, everybody. So yeah, I think you're right. And actually what I'm about to say includes pressure and release. So I was thinking, well, he's been responding so well in positive reinforcement to the fly mask. Can I bring an element of that when we're hacking alone to try and make it a nicer experience for him and try and encourage good behaviours? And so I didn't totally know where to begin. I'll be completely honest, because I don't yet have groundwork things that I can transfer to riding. Like, I just don't have that knowledge yet, which is fine because Miri will help me with that. But what I thought was, what if I can just ask him to pause and stop? Because quite often when he gets anxious, especially on the way home, what he wants to do is just go as quickly as possible. And that's where we run into trouble on the road, because if he's really, really, really anxious, getting him to stop to let a car go by is actually quite difficult, and then we end up not often but occasionally end up in a bit of a tricky moment. So what I decided today was I was going to go through the wood, and I put the clicker on my wrist, and I had some treats in my pocket, and I used a brrr sound, which I never do when I'm normally riding, so it was a completely different cue. And the first few times I was like, okay, brrr to stop, and when he stopped and paused, I'd click, give him a treat. Now, you could argue that I could have taught him the brrr in a school or a non-hacking moment, but I didn't think to do that before this ride, so I didn't. And sometimes we just have to start where we are. So I did that the whole way around, and even what was really interesting was first half of the ride, lovely, very, very soft, very, stretching everything. Second half of the ride after our canter, a little bit more up, felt a bit tense, a bit anxious, which is very, very Harley, second half of the ride. And I was like, okay, let me just walk through here, da-da-da-da-da. And then I did it a couple more times, the brr and the stop, and he did come back. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So I'm hoping this could be a really helpful cue. And what I'd like to do is, maybe with you, Miri, is, I nearly called you Mia then, is to find some other things that I can include that will just help unlock his body a little bit and help him come back to us. But anyway, very interesting sort of experimentation. I've been enjoying it.
Well, I think sometimes in those moments it's something that is calling him back to himself that is powerful. So the fact that you were like, okay, there's a lot going on, but can you listen to me? Us, yes, you're in your body, reward. You must stop calling them treats.
Sorry, what do you call them?
It's a reward. So because, and the reason that I mean it is because I think it would be good to have something that's lower value.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah.
So like a pocket full of like little fiber nuts and chaff, for example, would be a better thing than like a treat at a time, because a
Got
treat
you.
at a time can create frustration, whereas you've kind of like handing them kind of like a handful, then it's like a of something really chewy like chaff, then you can really reduce the frustration. I saw an unbelievable shift in Blondie's frustration when I was training her, when I started using like a handful of chaffy, nutty kind of stuff. She felt like she was just like chewing for longer. She was way more relaxed because everything took longer. It wasn't kind of like this big hit of dopamine every time she was doing the right thing. And then it also increases the kind of the repetition that you can use. I mean, for anybody out there listening, yes, it probably would have been a good thing to teach that cue from the ground first.
Yes.
So walking, brrr, stop, reward, walking, brrr, click, sorry, stop, click, reward. You know, that is what you're doing. And for anybody who maybe hasn't listened to the clicker training episode that we did with Hayley, the clicker is actually just a bridge. So it is only there to let your horse know that a reward is coming, and what it does is it allows for a pacing to happen when you go through positive reinforcement training. Whereas if it's just like do the right thing, get rewarded, do the right thing, get rewarded, you can sort of create a bit of a desperation for the food rather than creating this kind of do the right thing, have the click, know there's a pause, know the food is coming. Because this can be one of the things where people are like, you can't train that horse with food. Well, I believe you can probably train every single horse with food, and I'd be interested to hear Mia's take on this. But it's the way you do it is so important. We learnt this a lot at Red Wings, didn't we? Do you remember how much food you went through at Red Wings? They used quite high value reward. They used like a pasture mix, which is like, they called it horse crack.
Yeah. Well, they had horses that were that found what they were being asked, even at the very easy level, very, very difficult because of their relationship with humans. So they had to use a much higher value reward. But yeah, quite often if your horse is giving the wrong response, the value's too high, where you're placing yourself is wrong, you're not marking the correct behaviour. Like there's a lot of things that in the very beginning when I was taught at Villanova, you're taught that only when the horse's head moves away from you do you then mark the behaviour to reward it. And that is the good thing about the clicker, is it can mark a very specific moment in time. And there's a bit of trial and error with that. Sometimes you mark at the wrong moment and something happens. But there was a really interesting moment at Villanova, and I wish I could remember how she did it, because she basically had a dressage horse who was competing. I can't remember what the American level was, so I can't transfer it back, but it would have been at least like medium. And she had transferred his original cues to positive reinforcement. So he was trained with pressure and release, but she transferred his cues to positive reinforcement, and she would use the clicker to mark when a treat was coming, but she created a keep going sign. So she said, obviously you can't stop in the middle of a dressage test and click and reward, but what you can do instead is say, keep going, that's right, a reward is on the way, keep going, that's right, a reward is on the way. So she did it by giving him 2 taps on the neck, 2 taps on his wither. And so she'd basically start her test, ask a question, he would answer, tap, tap, ask a question, he would answer, tap, tap. And at the end of the test, she would click and reward. Now, obviously, she was like, this horse has built up a big, big tolerance for waiting, because a dressage test is like 6 minutes long. But it was the first time that I'd actually seen a rider truly be able to ride more than like a few seconds, or not having to mark every single movement. But I can't remember how she actually bridged the gap without causing frustration.
Well, maybe that would be a conversation for Mia today.
Yeah, we can ask. She must do something similar, or maybe she just, her horses work with her and there isn't like a need to mark every movement. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if she uses positive reinforcement. I imagine she's a bit like myself and does a lot of different things, like whatever is needed, rather than it being kind of one thing that she does, or like one way. But I had my first morning sort of that felt a bit like what the future's going to feel like here. which was nice. I worked all the horses in the arena, just one by one, doing the groundwork. I haven't been able to ride yet because they've all been really finding the move quite difficult. And I think, people the guys that built the arena, they were kind of like, "Have you ridden?" And I'm like, "No, not yet." And they were like, "Oh," and I'm like, that's not how I do things, because. And actually today was the first day, so they all moved on Tuesday, and today was the first day. We've had some little sessions here and there, but not loads. They've just been spending a lot of time in the field, a lot of time re-regulating with each other, a lot of time realising that not everybody leaves. And today was the first day when, I could actually feel like they all went, "Oh yeah, this is safe here," which was really cool.
Let's dig into that, because I get asked all the time, and I'm sure you do too, how long should I wait when I move my horse to get to ride them, to expect them to be able to cope with the routine? And the answers vary so much. There are people out there who are like, you shouldn't stop the routine, or you should get on the day or the next day. There are other people who go to the other end of the spectrum and are like, leave them for 3 weeks. And I don't think either of those is quite right. I think it's individual. But what are the things that you said they haven't felt? What was the language you used? That you didn't feel like they were ready? They were finding the move quite hard, and that's why you haven't ridden. So what are you seeing, and what are you waiting to see to know that you're going to get back on?
So I'm going to go back slightly to your I bought a horse and I don't know if I should ride it yet. And there are definitely multiple situations. But for me, there's kind of sometimes if you have a horse that has only known how to be ridden, then it's
As in hasn't done groundwork.
Hasn't done any groundwork, doesn't have any kind of skill of regulation of their own yet, then stopping riding them altogether can be quite detrimental. And actually, I know there's somebody, a client, that bought a horse and it had come over from Ireland and it had been only in the country for 3 weeks, and they tried it and rode it and had a great time when they did. But then they brought it home, its teeth needed doing, they didn't have a saddle, all of the usual things. And it really, really unravelled. When she then went back to start doing things with it, it was like, whoa, I can't. So you could have said that there was an argument for her carrying on, and then unravelling things gradually herself with the groundwork, rebuilding the foundations while still keeping the horse in ridden work. But then there's also the understanding of actually, well, those foundations weren't there, and that's why the horse completely lost its marbles. And so now she needs to go back and rebuild the foundations anyway, either way. And what I am doing is, I know that my horses understand about regulation a lot. All of the ones that have moved with me have been in training with me for a period of time. And so the ones that have coped the best with the move were not my own horses. They've struggled more than the training liveries, because the training liveries, I had to keep training. I had to prioritise them. 5 days a week, every week up until the move, I was still working those horses, ground working, doing their rehab, looking at their posture. Whereas my own horses, because I just didn't have the time, I had to be like, okay, you're just going to go in the field now. And they've struggled worse. Like Zora, she tried to kick me the other day.
Really?
She went out on the rope around me and she was so frustrated by the whole situation. She bucked in my direction.
Yeah.
But,
a
kind of, it wasn't like a get away from me. It was like I'm finding this really hard and I don't know how to handle it. So I've known I would have had a terrible time riding her. Like, if I had just got on, I would have felt like I was riding an unexploded bomb. She would have been carrying tension, compensation, anxiety. And those are the times when your horses get injured, because they're not in their body. They are somewhere else. And so, like Harley, when you go out hacking and he's like, not feeling good, it's not very good long term. You don't want to be doing that all the time, because then those are the moments when they put strain in the body unnecessarily. And that's when then things kind of start going in the wrong direction, I guess, and continue in that wrong direction unless you intervene.
in those moments, because I actually was thinking about this earlier and I was like, I wonder what Miri would say, again, because everybody has a different point of view. Let's say you're in the arena, you're at a show, you're out hacking, whatever. Actually, the scenario, I think, doesn't matter. And I think people act like it does, but I think I'll explain why in a sec. Would you ever advocate, let's say you're riding Harley like I was this morning, you get into the middle of the wood, a deer's jumped out, he's gone really, really tense through his whole body. Would you ever advocate getting off in that moment? Yes. And either getting off and doing some stuff and then getting back on, or just getting off and walking home? Because there's a bit of this narrative of like, oh, but if you get off, they'll always want you to get off. And I'm like, I don't think they think that way. That is so stupid. In my mind, that is so stupid. But I know that when I get off, there's something about, because I've had to do it in the past once or twice just to keep us out of trouble. And it's almost like he's like, oh, you're there. And I'm like, yeah, I'm here, mate. You're okay. Mm-hmm. Go on.
Yes, it's absolutely fine to get off. It's not a failure. You're not going to ruin your horse. They're not going to learn some ridiculous thing by you getting off them. You and I, Rhi came to visit the other day, and we were meant to record the podcast, but we had such a lovely time that we didn't. But we did have a very interesting conversation about how we think horses think.
Yes, we did.
And I would love, again, to get Mia's take on this, because I would love to hear how she feels horses speak in their mind. And it's very difficult, guys, and I'm not trying to personify a horse, and I'm not going to say that they do speak in their head, but like how their processing works. And we thought of it like that they kind of go, good, feel fine, body, food, friends, movement, okay, good, discomfort, discomfort, food, movement, okay, fine. And interject, Rhi, if you feel like I'm not getting this right. So in that moment, when you're hacking, it's like, okay, moving forwards, trees, birds, feet, moving, rider, sideways, bending, pressure in my mouth, okay, bird, deer, panic, deer, alarm, must run, running, slowing, pressure in mouth, feet, body, rider. Okay, rider on ground. Heart rate changing. Walking. Leader. Body. Posture. Slow down. No more deer. I really believe that is probably how it goes, because they're just responding to stimulus. There is no like, oh God, the human got off and now we failed at this. Oh, and now I feel emotionally sad that she didn't ride me all the way home. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run away midway through the ride, because then she won't ride me anymore. If that is the mentality, you shouldn't be riding your horse.
Yeah.
That's true, right? Because if they're like, every time you get off, they're like, fantastic, I won the battle. Stop getting on because your horse is having an awful time. Like, do you see what I mean?
Well, I mean, that conversation came from, we were talking about how horses experience pain. And I was saying it must be really frightening for a horse when they experience pain, because I was saying to Miri, have you ever had a moment where a sharp pain appears from nowhere? And you're in those first few seconds before you rationalize and use your adult brain, you go, oh my God, where's that pain coming from? That is really scary. Like, what is this? And I was like, imagine being a horse. You can't rationalize, oh, the pain is coming from my leg. And it's probably caused by nerves or like whatever the thing is, as in your actual nerves, not, psychological nerves. And I was like, it must be really scary to be like, there is pain and I don't know why, and all I can feel is this pain, and that must take up a lot of energy in their brain. And then we were talking about how, imagine if you're in pain and you're riding along and it's just like, pain, question, beer, and it's just like constant. So yeah, it's just very interesting. But yeah.
I think it's so important that we talk about this. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're talking about this before we speak to Mia, because she is a huge advocate for like how horses learn and the way that they do that, and the fact that there is a correlation between how the body works, the pain, the way we train them, all of those things. But I think understanding that, like imagining your horse thinking that, feeling in that way, like, there's pain in my body, there's pain in my body, there's pain in my body, now the saddle doesn't fit, now the saddle, and now there's pain there in the saddle, and we were talking about it, weren't we, about discomfort, because you've changed well, you changed Harley's saddle recently, and
Yeah.
you've noticed that the way he spooks is different now.
Yeah.
It's like a toned down version.
Yeah.
And I was saying that it's going back to that cup of tolerance, like that, stress bucket, that it's like, okay, if his stress bucket is, half full, for example, just from life, and then you have a saddle that doesn't fit, or that is, has become too tight because he's grown, it's a better way of saying it, that then adds to that stress bucket, that then things are just harder for him. Everything is just harder for him. So then when you reduce that, you suddenly have this change in like, oh, he's just more tolerant. He just finds things easier. Things aren't so he's not so easily tipped over that limit.
Yeah, for sure. No, it has been really cool. And actually, Mandy, the saddler, is coming tomorrow with the 2 jump saddles for me to try, which is really exciting because we have a jump lesson on Wednesday and then we're going on a fun ride on Friday that may have jumps, don't know. So I'm really excited to try, because that's the same tree that he's in now, the new tree, and he has been totally different. There's still days, like I haven't talked about it because I've got a YouTube vlog on it, but I went to Parwood for dressage on Saturday and he like warmed up really nicely, really soft, and the second I took him out of the warm-up, he was like, ooh, and I was like, oh no. And I'm like walking down towards the big arena and he's like spooking at shadows and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And I get into the big arena and I like walk him down to the judge and I'm like, hey, they said to come down a bit early. Is that okay? And they were like, yeah, that's fine. The warm-up was getting a bit busy and I try not to let him sit in that because it can be a bit stressful for him. So I like walk him around this arena that he's schooled in and he's been to Parwood like 3 or 4 times now. And he starts looking at things and I'm like, oh no. And she lets me have a trot round. But then my test, it wasn't amazing. Like he had a huge spook. I got him like round the first way. And then when I changed the rein and came to the same place again, he like properly put the brakes on, properly spooked away. I had to do a whole circle. And even then it was like a bit like trying to get through treacle. And I did get him back and the judge wrote lovely comments. She was like, you handled it very well. He was very much against you, which he absolutely was. But I was like, so it's not all perfect, but we had a lovely day in the sun. And I was sort of scratching my head with that one because, part of me is like, and my dressage coach is like, you've only taken him 3 times. You've only schooled him there once. You have to give him time and you have to kind of trust the process. But in my back of my mind, I keep thinking like, how much is trust the process and exposure, and how much is it like asking the same question and getting the same result, and what am I missing,
Yeah.
And it's a hard one, and I find it hard with that because I'm like, how do I transfer the groundwork to the saddle? And I find it all quite overwhelming. Yeah.
May I give you my 2 pennies worth?
Please.
So what it is in these situations is he has tolerance to a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
And when you then go in the arena for the test, that tolerance is overdone, that he no longer has tolerance in that situation. So what, in my opinion, you need to do is have him more connected before, so that then when you move into that more difficult environment, he stays with you. Because he's you're no longer able to help him, right?
Yeah.
In that moment, like he's like, you're not used to me, human. I'm checked
Literally
out of this. I'm in danger. Danger has occurred. And what would be a brilliant test to do, which is hard, would be to be able to go into the test, experience the hard feeling, get off groundwork.
I was literally just thinking
through your
that.
groundwork patterns and be like, remember this feeling? And him go, oh yeah, oh. But that's a very difficult thing to do because actually setting up that experience is very difficult. And obviously it's not really the done thing. But what you can also do is increase their capacity by training in a more difficult environment elsewhere. So like we were talking about the tool work, being able to ask him to approach difficult things ask him to have difficult things touching his body and allowing him to tell you when he feels good and not good about it, and removing the pressure at those appropriate moments. No, it's not flooding, because you're paying attention to him when he tells you that he is comfortable or not comfortable. You're not going past his threshold. You're training that very small reaction so that he can then become more confident in those more difficult environments. The reality is, riding a horse around a dressage test is not a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
You can't argue with me on that. That is not true.
No.
It's not. Putting a horse in a horse box is not a natural thing for a horse to do. So what we have to do is we have to help them understand how they're going to be able to do that. And I believe that this is just a section of his education that just currently doesn't exist. He doesn't know how to handle that yet.
And is it your opinion that, like, if you help a horse to almost treat spooky things agnostically, so you're not like, he's really terrified of bags, or he really hates that venue, which we hear a lot, right? And I've done this before. I've been like, well, he hates speed gate, so I just don't go there. And I think the reality is that, like, those venues just have more triggers at once. So, like, is it your view that, like, if we treat pressure in this context agnostically, and we train a better threshold for that even at home, that it gets better everywhere?
Yes. And agnostically, what Rhi means is like a metaphor. Like the plastic bag is a metaphor for the judge's table. Right?
Like, you don't have to train in that space with those boards. Yeah.
No. And this is what Tristan talks about. If you follow the TRT method, this is what Tristan discusses. He discusses the fact that we have to prepare horses for the human environment. We have to give them an opportunity to experience hard things in a controlled way, so that then when you go to the show and there's something outside the arena, you have worked on keeping him around your inside leg and him feeling softer at that difficult place. So I'll explain a very simplistic exercise that we would do. Is you have an umbrella, right? This is level 7, but it's kind of a really good explanation of how we do things. So what we start with is we start with them drawing towards the umbrella. They touch the umbrella, they're okay with the umbrella. We're then able to move around the side of them, up over their body. They become confident with that thing happening around them, because we've done lots of prep work before this. But then the next stage is you put the umbrella on the ground. And you put the umbrella on a ground where there is quite a big gap between them and the side of the arena, for example. And you ask them to walk around you on a lap, like on a small circle, and then you ask them to go through that gap. And when they are in that gap, you reduce your pressure to 0, less than 0, a minus number. You breathe out, you soften the rope, you drop your right arm. If they're on the left rein, your right arm would be your like energy arm. And you just say, that's a safe place to be, right? And then on the other half of the circle, you up into trot. Off we go. Yep, work here. This is where we're working. And then, whoo, energy down, umbrella. Process your umbrella. Energy up. Yeah, we're going to be working here. And it's not, you've seen the cowboys that are like driving horses around, driving them. This isn't that. It's like, energy. No, energy. And I'm doing it, I'm dramatising it so that it's really clear. But what you end up with is a horse that is resting by the thing that they were potentially previously unsure about. Now, if you put the umbrella out, and I'm saying this because this is level 7, so don't just go to this step, but if you put the umbrella out and the horse was like, you're not going to get to the point where they're going to like happily go through that gap very easily. And that's where this kind of work is important, that you work with a trainer who understands it, because your cues won't be perfect. You will probably be making some errors in terms of timing, that kind of thing. And it's really important that you get it right, because you can get it very wrong and you can make your horse more frightened, or you can make them really shut down by just being like, I'm not going to pay attention to what you're actually telling me. Just keep going, or keep being touched by the hard thing. But there is a way of helping them understand these things. And then you do it with the umbrella on the outside, which is probably more your experience of things being on the outside of the arena that are causing him fear. But then you get to the point where you can do it under saddle. So you ride through the gap. Every time you ride through the gap, drop the reins, soften the leg in your body. So they start realizing, oh, safe place, soften. Safe place, soften. I talk to people about this, if you have the spooky corner, that is not a place to add pressure. That is a place to relieve pressure. I have a video
Yeah.
on my YouTube actually about this from when I very first moved to our old yard 7 years ago, and I talked about this with this lovely horse Eric. He was really scared of one area in the arena, and I did a lot of like getting there, releasing the pressure, and people were like, oh, but you're dropping them. Well, yes, but you're also allowing them to understand that that is a place that you feel safe, so they can feel safe too.
Yeah.
As I learnt more, you keep a little bit of inside bend, always scratch the neck with the outside hand, allow the energy to go towards the thing that they're not sure about, and reward that side of the body that is then feeling softened. Like there's a whole different shift in how you can do it, but yeah, there is solutions. So yes, just doing the same thing and expecting a different result isn't going to do it, but also knowing it's like my pony when I was a child, scared of white jumps. No. No, he's not.
But it's you laugh, but like that's what we're taught, and this is where I started scratching my head. And I love my coaches, and they are right in lots of ways, and I think I'm just exploring broader horizons, because I was thinking about it in my drive back from the lorry. Like we went past someone's put new little stumps of wood next to a gateway, and he goes past it from the field, and he's like blowing. So I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity to stop, like on Miri's reel. And he stopped and he looked at it, and then he went right over and he started touching it. And I was like, this is great. How cool is this? I know. And then I was thinking about the dressage test, and I was like, well, this is the hard thing about dressage tests. Is like, you have to keep going. I can't just stop and be like, have a look at the thing. I have to keep adding pressure to be like, we have a thing to do. And he hates that. He's like, you are asking me impossible questions. And then he becomes quite an uncooperative partner. And so I was like, if I just keep doing this, it feels like it's just going to get worse. But you're like, but this is all I've been taught. So it's really interesting just to hear, like, there is another way, but it takes time and you have to think differently. Yeah.
But also, it is going to get worse because he will lose trust in you. Because he's saying, I feel unsafe. And you're saying, get on with it. Rather than you being able to go, okay, I'm going to put my hand up to the judge right now. I'm going to turn hind leg. I'm going to ask him to walk. And I would genuinely go to a show, one of your local shows like this, where you like somewhere like this, and say, right, I'd like to enter this test as if I'm going to ride it. I may ride the test. I might not. If I put my hand up to retire, can I just have 5 minutes on board? Don't try and get off. They'll tell you off for that. But can I have 5 minutes on board?
Really? Even if you're retired?
I think if you were having a really, really hard time, they'd probably be okay. But we're not quite at the point where people understand that groundwork and dressage can coexist.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah. So in that moment, my suggestion would be we can talk through this and I can send you some videos. I feel like we're having a consultation call now, but maybe...
I know this, I think this is great.
But what my suggestion would be is that you practice at home your groundwork patterns on board, and I can teach you about that. And they can be a little bit of a kind of a stopping the negative feeling, because the negative feeling is up, tight neck, braced body, running sideways, Essentially, we want what is the counter to that? Soft body, low neck. So it would be things like turning hind leg while on board. So it's that inside rein, inside leg, soften the outside rein, rub the neck with the outside hand, breathe out in yourself, whatever it might be, until you just find that down regulation in the body. Yeah. And then maybe you trot 1 20-meter circle and then you come out of the arena. And it's being able to break the cycle and then do one small positive thing to then end in that good way. Yeah.
And I didn't quite do that, but when I came out of my test, actually the person after me had cancelled, I think, so there was just a big gap. So I was going to go and ask the judge, can I just ride in here for a minute, but I left it a bit late and then I didn't have the confidence to go back up to ask. So, but there's a bit at the bottom of Parwood, if you've ever been there, where you have the arena with the boards, but then you have a big gap where you can be at the bottom. And I did a couple of 20-meter circles on both reins, and he had a quick look to begin with, but then he really softened, and for a few minutes I got what I get at home. And I was like, well, this is really nice. And then I took him, there's a little round pen that they have, and I did a little trot round there on both reins. And again, he started a bit up, but then he relaxed. And I was like, well, at least I've done that. Like, you know.
This is really interesting. And I wonder if there is an element of two pressures meeting each other. He is feeling like going in a dressage test is quite hard, and you are feeling like, I do not have any time or space for you to not be okay in this dressage test, without even realising that is happening. So what you said there, I wanted to go and speak to the judge, but I kind of ran out of time. My suggestion would be prepare for it to not go well, so that if it doesn't, you don't then feel like, oh, excuse me, could I just just be like, hi, this horse is really struggling when I go from the warm-up to the arena. This test, I might just completely throw it away. Can I use my 5 minutes however I see fit if it doesn't go well? Because I can't seem to manufacture this difficult environment in any other way other than when I go to a show. And then see what they say. And they might just say, sure thing, whatever you like, you crazy lady. And then you have your 5 minutes, but you know that they're not even watching, they're just writing their notes of the previous person or something. And you've got some time in that arena, in that environment, in that moment to help him. Because there will be an element of doing all of this work that we've been speaking about at home. But then there will also be the element of you've got to go in the test and you've got to be able to find the good feeling in the body in that moment as well.
Exactly. I love that. And I think that's really helpful advice because, you know, when people say, and there might be a bit of my pride talking here, but people are like, well, you're probably a bit nervous because you're in a test. And I'm like, well, I've actually worked really hard on not doing that. And also, it's just not helpful. Like, I'm quite careful with my body and stuff, but just saying to people, well, just don't be nervous when you ride a test, or like, just don't ride any differently. That is not helpful advice for people because people find that really hard to do. And whereas actually being like, prepare for it not to be great and talk to the judge and be like, you know, I might just use this time for something else. Actually, that is helpful because you're still in your environment and you're still with your plats and stuff. And even if you're not riding differently, the environment is different. It just is. The horses aren't stupid. And I think the thing about dressage tests is there are movements one after another. You can't just do another circle and bring them round again or whatever. I mean, you can, but you'd not be doing the test. So, yeah, very interesting. Well, stay tuned.
Even if when you try to pretend that there isn't pressure, it adds pressure.
Yeah, because you're then like, don't be pressured, just ride
I'm
normally.
Definitely not nervous. I'm not, and you are. So what can you do?
Yeah, and even like it's not even like nerves because I don't feel nervous actually when I compete anymore. But I do ride more defensively, where I'm like, well, I need to get an inside bend early here because I know he's going to have a spook at that corner, or I need to have that leg on, and like that isn't nerves, but it's certainly not the same as at home where I'm like, well, if he spooks, it's fine. I'll just like ignore it and come round again. I can't do that. So, yeah, very interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So we just want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this episode, The Hoof School. Now, The Hoof School are going to be sponsoring a number of episodes in this season, and we are going to take you along on our learning journey. So The Hoof School is an online academy, essentially, for learning all about hoof care. Whether you are barefoot already, whether you are starting out your barefoot journey, The Hoof School are here to educate you and maybe guide you on that path. So, Rhi, you have started your learning. Tell us what you have learnt this week on the Hoof School.
Well, first of all, I find this really exciting because I think like quite a few, what did I say? I said I'm barefoot curious on a previous season because I love this idea of going barefoot, but I often get quite afraid. And I think some of that fear just comes from a lack of knowledge. Will I be able to spot things? Will I know what to do? And so this is a really cool way of like helping to fill that gap. So my first impressions are I love that it is a mix of video and written content. Everybody learns differently and I'm a very visual learner, so I really like the videos. And in the first module, which is the one I've completed, you kind of get this baseline understanding of horses as a species and of different grasses and how they affect horses. And then you get a view of all of the different parts of the hoof. Which I'm ashamed to say I didn't actually know all the different parts of the hoof. And sometimes I'm on barefoot groups and they're talking about these different things in such minutiae and such detail, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So that's been really cool. And what I like is that she kind of sets you, or the Hoof School sets you homework that you can then take away and kind of engage with in the Facebook group. So it feels like something that you are doing on your own, but you're not alone. And I love that. What about you? What were your first impressions?
I too really enjoyed the fact that it was both visual and written, because actually sometimes I quite like to read something. You know, I don't necessarily always have the opportunity to have the sound on or whatever it might be, so actually being able to sit and read. Now, I am a barefoot fanatic, you could say, quite definitely progressed through the curious stage, but for me it's the same as you know, actually learning what things are called, understanding about how the mechanics of the hoof actually work and why that's so important for the horse's body. We will keep you posted as we go through our learning with the hoof school, and we look forward to sharing that with you. We will share all of the details in the show notes as always, and we hope that you might join us on our learning journey. Back to the podcast. Oh, this brings us nicely onto our conversation with Mia. Here she is. That was good timing.
That was great timing.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mia. We are so excited to have you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm good. Yeah, good today.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What you do now and how you got there?
Well, it's a long one. I'll try and keep it short. So, I kind of am the founder of the Heart of Horsemanship, which is my company. It's now kind of grown a bit exponentially that I'm like, I just want to train horses and teach, and I don't know how to run a company. So that's really funny and fun. And we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes on kind of restructuring at the moment. Kind of the basis of what I do is natural horsemanship, but that term and terminology is shifting and changing quite a lot at the moment. So I can reframe it with some of the newer lingo, like I blend negative and positive reinforcement. I'm very interested in trauma release as well, and similar to you, Miri, get a lot of horses in with behavioural issues, a lot where they're dealing with pain memory, and we're rehabbing them a lot of the time. But what else? I'm a Liberty and Bridleless riding specialist now, I guess I can call myself, because I've got a Liberty team of up to 10 horses. We can do high level manoeuvres at Liberty with one or multiple horses, and that is truly my passion, is the Liberty side of things. And then going into the bridleless riding now, that's kind of become a bit of a specialisation, even though I've been doing it since I was 13. It's these last 2 years, and particularly this year now, it has just erupted. So, and it's really cool and really exciting. But day to day, same as you probably, like training horses, training my own horses, teaching people, filming content for our online academy, podcasting. We've done quite a lot of these already this year, so thank you guys so much for having me on yours. And I have tuned in to quite a few episodes of yours, and obviously, Miri, you're really good friends with my great friend Liz as well. Woo, big up Liz. And yeah, that's kind of what I do, who I am. I really care about the horse's mind, obviously their body, but I feel a lot of the time horses don't feel like they're being seen or heard because of our inability to read and respond appropriately to their language, basically. So, and even though we get a lot of horses in for behavioural issues where they might be competition horses or recreational riding horses, I kind of have that undercurrent of liberty and capturing the horse's mind and keeping their connection with everything we do. So a lot of the horses, like we have a show jumper in for training at the moment, jumping's not the problem, everything else is. Like, he's so explosive and reactive to environmental influence, to other horses in the collecting ring, other horses' energy in general. He just kind of explodes upwards really quickly. And he's such a sweetie, but he just doesn't know how to regulate himself. So again, I could go into science of like polyvagal theory, which I know they're kind of unpacking at the moment, but all of this, very similar to you, Miri, we just blend up. And ultimately, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of horses now have taught me so many lessons that, along with a lot of the training I have had, they've kind of made me who I am and what we do today. And I just want to share and spread as much education as we possibly can, because it is now so accessible. And everyone deserves to be living their dream with their horse, and every horse deserves to be happy with their human. And my favourite quote is, if horses are recreation for us, how can we be recreation for our horses? So that's like a nice way to sum it all up, I guess.
That is one of the things I said, Mia, when we chatted a bit about the conversation we're going to have. I said that you and I, although have had probably very different educations in how we got to where we were, that we have very aligned beliefs on all of it. I said we could have had the same parents if we'd had, if we, you know what I mean? Like we could have been sisters in that way, because we've come to a very similar place, but with totally different educations, really. Like, I just think, such an important conversation to be having. And like you say, like, horsemanship is changing so much, like what people believe it is, whether they think it's something that is just for a very niche part of the equestrian community or not, is definitely starting to shift, and I think I'm all for it. Can you tell us a bit, Mia, about how you said you've been riding bridleless since you were 13? I'm really jealous, because I had to go through a really rubbish load of years where I definitely wasn't riding bridleless. I was doing the direct opposite of that, and I wish I wasn't. But anyway, here we are. Can you tell me how you got into who were you as a kid?
Well, so as a kid, horse mad. I love art as well. I'm a drawer, painter in my free time. Not that I have any, so I haven't done it for ages now, but lol. Always used to draw horses. And then from a non-horsey family, I was very lucky. My granddad had a farm that he had some DIY liveries at, but he doesn't know anything about horses. So I was kind of around horses, but I did the good thing of like work 10 free weekends, get 1 free riding lesson at the local stables. And we had these little like little things they'd sign each week, you know, and then I'd hand it in, get my free lesson, like a voucher. And luckily my auntie kind of saw my interest in horses and nurtured that. So she'd pay for me to own a pony days, go to summer camp at the local riding school, you know, all of that. So very traditional upbringing, but I was always most interested in the connection. So obviously you and I are similar ages, and we had Spirit come out, and that was like, oh my God, he's riding a horse with no saddle and no bridle, and they love each other and they're best friends. And I was like, oh my God, Spirit's the best. Loves the Black Stallion. Oh yeah, Miri. Yeah.
I never watched Spirit.
No.
I never watched
Did
it.
you not?
I've
I
never
went for
seen
my
it.
birthday.
You've never seen
It's
it?
really good. It's also a very good.
No.
Miri, you're going to cry.
Miri.
when
Well,
you
it's
watch
really
this.
it's really like a story of the American West, and not in the best light, I'll be honest, but it is really beautiful, and the score is amazing.
Oh, Hans Zimmer is my all-time favorite composer by like any Liberty performance I do.
Good.
Yeah, it's Hans. He's the best.
Okay.
So so Spirit,
Evening
the Black
sorted.
Stallion. You will cry. I'm just warning you.
I cry most days for not many reasons, so it's fine.
I love it. So and you know, the Black Stallion I loved because it was the boy and the horse stranded on the desert island, and they were forced to learn each other's like communication, I guess, ways of communication to survive. And then this beautiful friendship came to be, and you know, galloping bareback and bridleless down the beach. So that was totally my goal. And my family ended up giving me a pony who was an orphan foal, so that says a lot just to begin with. She was an absolute nightmare. And I couldn't catch her. She'd bite me, kick me, rear, strike. She was kind of known to be the really nasty pony, and I fell off her every time I rode, to the point where I started faking being ill to avoid riding lessons, because I was like, I actually don't want to ride this pony. But I loved her, and I was like, why doesn't she love me back? Like, I'm just this little girl that loves this pony and she hates me. And, you know, traditional thing of if she was playing up, whack her on the shoulder until she'd stop, and she'd just escalate her behaviour. She was chestnut mare as well, Arab Welsh pony. And I was just having a miserable time. And I really loved horses, and I felt so conflicted with what was going on. And I was sat at home ill one day, actually ill, watching Horse and Country TV. And Pirelli came on, and Rachel Morland, who is now Rachel Scheuer and is a really good friend and colleague of mine now, she was galloping bareback and bridleless down the beach and had a very similar story where she wanted this lovely friendship with her horse, and it just turned out to be the absolute opposite, and like a nightmare, and chaos and stress and anxiety and reactive horses and falling off, and just not the dream that we set out for. And from that moment on, I was like, right, there's another way. That's that. So I read every single book, watched every single video, watched every single DVD. I then started just spectating hundreds of clinics. And I mean, I was so little and young and didn't know what I was looking at. I'd go to a clinic, meet the instructor, and I'd just be shaking. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And like, but I was so excited. And you know, it was just unbelievable to me that normal people were doing this a different way with their horses. And I was really lucky that even like half a mile down from the local riding stables, they were hosting clinics with natural horsemen and women. And my mum's friend's neighbour was going, so took me along, you know, that sort of thing. I was just trying so hard to learn a different way. And sure enough, I never fell off of Posey again after that. So I did start slowing down on the traditional lessons, even though my parents knew nothing, and they said, oh, well, your traditional instructor says it's a load of bollocks. You know, don't listen. You don't know what you're talking about, and they know what they're talking about. And my parents kind of hated that I was doing horses full stop anyway. So, you know, they were very begrudgingly helping me, and not. But yeah, so I just became a sponge. I had to do school. It kind of got in the way. And after that, became a working student. Was a working student for 2 years under Liz and Sean Coleman, who were Pirelli professionals at the time, and lived in a caravan because my parents said, if you're not going to uni, you're on your own, sort of thing. So bought a £300 caravan, lived in my £300 caravan, wasn't paid for 2 years, worked my arse off, you know, that sort of thing, just to learn. And then I got my proper horse, Solo, again, a big chestnut. I love chestnuts. And I'd had some real success with ponies after starting my natural horsemanship journey. So that's where I had a pony on loan, Harry, who was just wicked. He was totally my heart horse, and I could gallop him anywhere, bareback and bridleless. Like, he was just wicked. Gorgeous Welsh cob, chestnut, flaxen mane and tail, 4 whites and a blaze, like gorgeous pony. And his owner sadly took him back after my loaning him and sold him, and my parents couldn't afford to buy him for me. So that was like my childhood trauma, absolute heartbreak. And eventually, I think I was 18, 19 when I got Solo, and I thought I was pretty good, and Solo taught me otherwise. So I'd been pretty successful, and Solo just was like, no, you're a shit leader. Sorry, don't need you. He's so fiercely independent and very dominant, but in a very quiet, self-confident way. He just didn't need me. He was like, don't need you. What's the point? Don't see why we should be doing this. And he knocked all my confidence out of me. And I was very lucky to be a working student and have the support at the time of having him, and got to grips with him. Took a long time. He's still that cheeky monkey he is today. You know, he's still like that today, but I'm a much better leader for him now. And ended up being noticed by Pat Pirelli. He offered me a full scholarship to go out to the States. So I spent quite a lot of time studying under Pat and Linda, going to and fro from the States at a time. Also got to study with amazing horsemen and women along the way. Like, some of their instructors were just out of this world, phenomenal. And I know Pirelli got a really bad rap and a bad name, but the original core of the training, it is just good horsemanship. You know, it's just good horsemanship. And their foundational training was fantastic. And spent some time with Mike Bridges, who's a California Vaquero horseman as well. So that was all very French classical types of training, with like the Western horsemanship side of it involved. Came back to England, spent 2 years training with Peter Madison Greenwell, who's a classical dressage instructor. Helped him with a few very tricky Spanish horses. One that was Grand Prix trained and jacked it in and threw off every rider. And he basically said, get this horse as safe as you can, as fast as you can, and I'll teach you how to ride all the Grand Prix movements. So Peter sorted out my riding, my biomechanics, started teaching me more about healthy horse biomechanics, because I found Pirelli were kind of getting there, but they had this huge hole, like gaping hole, with how horses were, the focus on the biomechanics, basically. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of hindquarter yields. They're a really big, useful tool to get control of a situation if the energy's escalated. But when you use them as a bit of a consequence, they can put a lot of pressure on the horse's back end. And it's good for a horse to know, but you don't need to use it every day. And then Peter, I then kind of was starting to train a lot of horses, getting a few in professionally. So the business was kind of growing. A few people knew me a bit more. I then also got Spirit, my like super wonder, amazing heart horse. And he was very tricky, but a very opposite type of personality. He was very flighty, very emotional, extremely extroverted, ADHD horse, like just a bit of a flighty, wild thing. But I very quickly clicked with Spirit, I think because I'm very similar to him. And we got selected to be on the working equitation squad for 3 years. So we were training and competing in working equitation all the time. So that also helped my riding a lot, gave a lot of purpose. Like, my horses and obstacles was the easy peasy part. Everything else was the dressage and the riding that was lacking for me. Like, I could train my horses to be pretty self-confident and really trusting in my leadership and our partnership. So that bit was easy. It was the dressage that I struggled with. Because in a show, you can do whatever you need to do to fit your horse in the moment. In a competition, you can't. So no one knows what I'm about to do in a show. And if I'm like, oh, I'm going to canter, and my horse is like, oh, I don't really feel ready to canter, I'm like, cool, we're changing it. Like, I won't canter here. I'll maybe do another circle of trot. I'll maybe do a leg yield, see if you can release through your ribs. All right, now you feel a bit more relaxed and supple and balanced. Now how about canter? And they go, yeah, all right. I go, perfect. And no one knows that that's going on. But in a competition, if your horse feels tense at H or whatever, and you have to canter at C, I don't actually know where the letters are, and I should, but I can't remember them. You have to canter. Like, you know, that's like the precision is the harder bit for me, and not just going with the flow for the horse. So yeah, and then after working equitation, kind of performing at shows took off a lot more. So my weekends went from competing to performing, which I much prefer. And lockdown happened. I got to train my first Liberty team during lockdown, loved it. And now all of a sudden we've got a show team, an online academy, training horses, teaching. We're training some instructors to be accredited Heart of Horsemanship instructors now. So lots of people or a few people who have worked very closely with me now for a few years. And here we are kind of landing at the bridleless stuff, I guess. So Horse and Hound did an article on me online, and that blew up. It was like their most shared and reacted to online article they'd had. And then they followed up with a 2-page spread in a recent magazine, which is really cool. Like, that is still, to me, that's like insane, because that is the most traditional magazine. And I'm like, oh my God, as if. And I grew up reading Horse and Hound, and that happened. So yeah, that was cool. Then now this bridleless dressage thing has just blown up. And about 2 years ago, my wonderful young horse Boogie, who I've had since the foal, he's a black PRE, and I've had him since he was weaned, with his brother Mo, who if you're watching a video, I'm standing on there. So Mo's grey and Boogie's black. And Boogie's first ever ride was bareback and bridleless on the beach, which was really cool. So as a 4-year-old, had a beach trip, played with him at Liberty on the beach. Oh yeah, Rhiannon, you're yeah.
Yeah, maybe let's talk about that, because first of all, you know, you meet people who are so meant to do what they do, and I really feel like you are that person, because you had so many moments early on where people were like, no, no, no. And it doesn't take a lot for people, especially in equestrianism, if they're not sure, to pull back. Like, it only takes a couple of comments from someone on a yard to be like, are you sure you want to go barefoot? Are you sure you want to do groundwork? Oh, that doesn't feel like the right way of doing things, to make someone shrink. And you felt you just seem to be so sure, and it's so cool. I mean, what a journey. I think let's maybe start with the bridleless. I have so many questions, but let's start there, because that, as you said, Horse and Hound have been talking about it, and that's where your videos blew up, and you were, doing your bridleless dressage. So how do you start a horse going bridleless? If we've got people here who, I mean, I definitely have dreamed this up and like, oh, I'd really love to try going without a bit or a bridle, but I don't know where to start, and I'm scared about not being safe. So like, how do you start?
Yeah, great question. So I find Liberty and bridleless are all about the mental connection. So having your horse's mind without a physical tie. So for me, say with my own horses, it's really easy to carry over because I've got a really strong connection with them on the ground, and they understand how to read my thoughts, intentions, energy and body language. And that's just super easy to carry over. But for a normal person who, say, doesn't have a high degree of liberty with their horses, it's all completely possible. We've taught people from like recreational riders with cobs, hunting horses, to top level show jumpers like my friend Serena, who you'll have seen jumping bridleless as well. Anyone can learn it. Any horse can learn how to be ridden bridleless. For sure, some take to it more easily than others. But really, the start is not just taking your bridle off and neck reining and hoping for the best, because that can be dangerous for sure, unless you've got a really well-schooled horse where you ride off your seat mostly already, then you're fine, luckily. And don't get me wrong, like, I've also done not silly, but calculated risk, where I've gone, this horse is pretty safe. I know I haven't got all the tools, but actually let's just take the bridle off and see what happens. And they've been fine. So no one died. But the real communication just comes from the horse's understanding of each aid individually. So it's that age-old, like, separate, isolate, recombine. So our 4 main aids, I'd say, are your body. So your seat is included in your body. Your neck rope. I also ride bridleless without a neck rope. I actually only use the neck rope now to ask for collection. It's not really for steering or for stopping. Your stick. So this is very controversial, especially at this day and age with what's going on around whips and sticks at the moment. we use the stick to push the turns, and to horses, driving pressure is much more innate and natural than pulling pressure. We're pulley grabby creatures, so we'd rather see a horse get pulled than pushed. But for a horse, they'd much rather be pushed than pulled. And then your voice. So if you can have your horse understand each of those aids in isolation, when you put them all together, you've got shit hot communication. Like, your horse really understands what you're looking for. So, at standstill, without touching your reins, can you get your horse to do a turn on the haunches, a turn on the forehand, and move sideways just using your legs and nothing else? That's like the isolation of just your body and your seat, and back up as well without reins. Then can you do all of that off the neck rope? Then can you do all of that with just a stick? Then can you do that all voice operated? And then when you put it all together, your horse really understands what you're looking for. So the level of communication is just really high, and I guess that's what makes it safe. So of course we practice controlled catastrophes, where we have an emergency stop, and it's not a whistle stop, because if your horse is truly in flight, a whistle ain't stopping them. Sorry. And that's where our sticks do come in. And I don't really need to use my stick for turning or anything, but I have it just in case. Just in case I need to stop, I can put it down to his nose, and I can push his nose to push him onto a circle, bend him down to a stop, just like we would a one rein stop. So if I want to turn left, I kind of tap the air around my horse's nose, so I can really the end of their muzzle to turn their nose that way. And that's essentially how we start the steering, just with a stick. But of course, you want it to be your seat, your weight, your body first, and then the stick comes in to help. And I try not to steer using the neck rope, because I find people who neck rein, the horses often bend the opposite way and fall onto the inside shoulder rather than shape around the turn. And using the stick to shape your horse's flexion creates a much more balanced turn in general. And again, horses love it. They love being ridden like that. So it's there's no micromanagement. Teaches you to have a very independent seat. It's much more natural for them. The proof is in the pudding. That's kind of how I'd start with bridleless riding.
This conversation is just incredible, and I think so important to be having for people to understand it all, because all of what you're talking about riding bridleless is what I believe is missing when it comes to horses at the top level of the sport. Because
I totally agree.
Like you said, we are such grabby, pulley people, human beings. These amazing things we have, our hands, everything you do. Look at me, even now, to get my point across, my hands are out in front of me. I want to, pull on things, touch things, save myself by putting my hands out in front of me. And it's so amazing to hear you explain, it's a mental connection, and I want to dive into that more, because I feel like I have completely lost track of that within myself recently. But also, can you talk a little bit about, you said you agreed with me when I talked about how this is lacking at the top of the sport, but can you talk to me about why it is possible for it to have become what it has become in the top of the sport, in the sense of why can we do this to horses? What's your take on that? Because people say things like, oh, if they didn't want to, they wouldn't, and I don't believe that's true. But can you talk a little bit about why this has taken place?
Yeah, I guess we are seeing more competition riders recognising what we do, because they're recognising some holes in their foundation and their relationship with their horses. And often, say, you or I might get called in just as a little snapshot, like a quick fix of my horse doesn't relax. How can I teach it to relax, to be better, to perform? That's like a little snapshot. or if they're holding tension, they don't change clean, or if they're holding tension, they knock a rail, and all of those sorts of things. And I guess that also, we are only the snapshot because it's all about the result. And again, this whole thing of like money, results, time, pressure all comes in, and whatever the quick fix is, and certainly you can put horses under immense amount of pressure in a very skillful way that doesn't appear untoward. But then when you really start recognizing the horse's body language and behaviors, you can actually see the damage that's causing mentally, emotionally, and physically. So like high level dressage horses, that Horse and Hound are on it at the moment. They posted a brilliant article about should a horse really be that labored in something, and like looking sweaty, and that
I read that.
Yeah, it was, I can't remember exactly, but I was like, oh, that's a good article. Like, that's a really good one. These conversations are great that people are now having. Because actually, like,
about the ballerina.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Sorry. It was about the one about like the comparison into human sport, and if you were to see a ballerina dripping in sweat, you'd be like, something's a bit off there.
That's not.
And they were talking about the same thing, that lightness and
elegance,
elasticity and elevation and elegance is all been lost, and we've ended up in pulling. And they talk about this a lot, and you and I, Mia, were talking on Instagram the other day about what's his name, Verboemen, this guy,
Justin Zonic,
Justin Verboemen, and we were talking about, me and Mia were talking about how this horse is pushing from the ground, not pulling its legs off the floor. Tristan talks about this a lot, Tristan Tucker, about teaching horses to lift themselves and push away at the same time, rather than just like pulling themselves off the ground in this unnatural format.
And
it's very interesting.
It's super interesting, and it's really cool. These conversations are now coming into the forefront of everything, like, thank God. So I commented like, great conversations on Horse and Hound, and I try to like and share wherever I can.
I'm really interested too because of the moment in time that we're in. A lot of people are wanting to try things, but are frightened of like getting it wrong or being unsafe. And something we were talking about before you joined, Mia, was the blending of negative and positive reinforcement, by which we mean riding along, using pressure and release, and then using positive reinforcement for certain cues. And I was saying about how with my horse struggling to hack alone sometimes, I've just started, just in my last hack this morning, using a different cue for a stop, to give a treat, to give him a moment just to pause, instead of wanting to constantly rush forward. But when I was originally taught positive reinforcement in the US, I was lucky enough to go over to Via Nova and learn all about it. They were very clear that they didn't believe you should have positive reinforcement and pressure and release in the same session at all. Wow. And I think that's really difficult. And Miri and I were talking about, well, is there ever really any environment where you're not using pressure? So what's your perspective on blending the two? Because you mentioned it in your introduction.
Yeah, so I totally agree. And even just our presence and expectation of a result is pressure. That's like the first thing. I've only had 2 horses I've trained purely through positive reinforcement. So where they were both so traumatized you couldn't actually get near them, and like one had been in the field for years with a head collar and a little rope on, and were so terrified of people that if you used any negative reinforcement, even just the feeling of a head collar was too much, you couldn't catch them for a week, so you couldn't put them in a stable. They were dangerous to stable. They had been eventing horses, so that's quite telling. It's not like it's a feral pony that's had 1 or 2 bad things happen. It's like these horses had competed, and there was the consideration they were just going to be stood up in the field because no one could get near them to put them down. So that was 6 months of pure positive reinforcement. Got some really nice results. Then I started blending in negative reinforcement with them, and I blend both with my horses. So I'd say mine are predominantly trained through negative reinforcement. However, I have some horsenalities, which is an old kind of Pirelli personality model, that really benefit from it. So actually, Boogie, my dressage horse, he's innately a very shy, introverted, inwardly anxious horse. And using treats to reinforce like any expression, or even if he offers something but it's wrong, I'm like, great, thank you, that's amazing. Like even last night, I was really tired last night. I had a little play at Liberty, and he offered me stuff. I was like, oh my god, wow. But I'm playing with him at Liberty using negative reinforcement through driving pressure, I guess, because I push, then I pull, then I'm asking him to step sideways, then it's trotting, then I'm looking for stretch on a circle, and he almost offered like some self-carriage and passage steps on his circle. I was like, oh my god, okay, stop, yes, reward, treat immediately. So I blend it.
And when that happens, I'm really curious about this, because again, I've only been taught one model of positive reinforcement, which is that you're looking for a behaviour, and then you give maybe a verbal cue and you mark it with a clicker, and then you treat. But it sounds like we're at Liberty, where it's a bit more free flowing and you don't really know what is going to happen. Are you marking the behaviour, or are you just like great behaviour, reward?
I still say yes as my marker word. So and I use it as timely, or in the same way I would a clicker, but having a clicker in my hand is too much. Or I'd rather go like myself and be able to mark the behavior, and then it gives him time to like break to walk, come to me to fumble around in my pocket, give him the treat, and he knows that that was the behavior I wanted or loved, like, yes, that's an amazing one. And then sure enough, he offers more, and it treats as such a wonderful way to nurture his confidence a bit, because he's such a good boy and doesn't want to get it wrong, and very shy, very anxious. So but his brother is the total opposite in personality, and they were born on the same day within an hour of each other. They're very genetically similar, different mums who were like related, and then same dad, and they've had the same upbringing, the same training. Everything has been the same, and Mo was just born and hit the floor as a cheeky monster. And he's one of these that's like larger than life, really dominant, really playful, mouthy, bitey, bolshy, bargy, loves to move or buck and rear just for fun. He's the boss in the herd as well. And they were just born that way. So they've been like a lovely nature nurture debate for me. So the techniques and strategies I use to play with Mo are totally opposite to what I do with Boogie, but the result I'm looking for is the same.
Do you think that would be to do with the fact that maybe just one of them very early on, like, did they live together, like in a herd early on?
Yeah, in a herd with lots of other mares and foals.
I wonder if it's to do with like filling gaps within the dynamic. Like one of them maybe like on just that in that particular instance kind of stepped back, and so the other one sort of stepped forward in that moment, and then they just repeated that same role, and then you end up with one that's like, yeah, you take the limelight, I'm fine, and the other one's like, well, this is what I've always done, so here I am. Love it.
It's interesting. They are like doppelgangers of their mums. So Mo's mum is quite a full-on mare. Like, they've got this brilliant video of her having her dinner, and there's a pheasant within like 5 meters of her and her dinner, and she's like attacking it, stomping at it, launching at it, like ears flat back, and the pheasant's just there. And I was like, oh my god, that is so Mo. Like, they're just so similar. And then Boogie's mum is just this really quiet, good girl who just stays out of trouble and doesn't want to cause any chaos.
You mentioned earlier about doing dressage with Boogie, and something Miri and I were talking about before you came on is in the US, there was a demo rider who had a horse working at, I think it would be the UK equivalent of like medium or advanced medium. So like fairly, difficult things. And he'd been trained traditionally with pressure and release, and she had transferred all of the cues to positive reinforcement. And in order to take him through a whole dressage test with multiple movements, she had built in she called it a keep going marker, where every movement she would ask, and then when he did it right, she would tap him twice on the wither, and then at the end of the test she would mark it with a clicker, and then she would treat, because of course you can't treat every movement in a dressage test. So is this a familiar concept to you, this idea of like telling a horse to keep going, waiting for a reward? And if so, how do you bridge the gap between the two?
That's an amazing question. And that's so cool to know that someone's out there doing it like that as well. That's awesome. And I do the same with Boogie. So you can feel. So say like Boogie asking for his collection, I've taught it without reins. So Spirit, my working equitation horse, is schooled to he can do piaffe, passage, pirouettes, 3-time changes. I know I could take the bridle off and do those, but I trained it with a bit and a bridle. And with Boogie, because I started this when he was 5, like the collection and dressage side of things. I want to see if it can be done without reins. So not just school him to a really high level with a bridle and then take it off. My goal has been, can I school those movements truly without a bridle? And right now we're working out haunches in and half pass, because how do I keep the bend to the inside and ask for the hips to come over when you've got no rein to help with that inside bend? And that's where the true understanding of my inside leg has come to play. But similar thing, teaching this collection, I've gone, okay, when I put pressure on the neck rope here, it means sit back, lift your thoracic sling, and naturally he drops into a bit of vertical flexion, sometimes too much, but he's Spanish and has a very short neck, so they tend to curl up a little bit too much, and that's my battle, is trying to keep him up, but in front of the vertical without just curling up. Same story, Spanish horse. And initially, I'd yes and reward for 1 stride, and then 2 strides, and then 3 strides, and then 4 strides, and then in a transition, and then to trot, and then canters really hard. But then how do I get it to a 6-minute dressage test where he can maintain that? And he knows that I also use a stretch as a bit of a release and the reward for him as well. Because obviously, I'm asking him to maintain that self-carriage without the support of reins. It's bloody hard for them. It's so hard. And he has to be really fit and strong to maintain that self-carriage. And when we're, say, going along, trotting down the long side, I can feel him go, oh, it's really hard. And I guess in my intention, I'm going, come on, buddy, 3 more strides, and then I'll release with a stretch or stop and treat. And I guess it's that feeling, but having the horse know and trust that you're not going to push them beyond their physical capabilities, so they still feel successful even though it's a stretch and it is discomfort. I guess I'm trying to piece the 2 things together in my head, where I'm like, oh, how do we do that? So I guess I don't have a tap on the withers in the same way, but I've got this feeling of come on, buddy, little bit more, there, great, thank you. And I guess it's stretching it. So you do initially start by stopping and rewarding each movement or try, and then you have the stretch and then the reward.
It's not that different, actually. I was thinking about a friend who, she's trained her horse to PSG, and she said, she rides traditionally, but she said that if she's riding a test and she feels that her mare is finding it hard, she will give a micro stretch in that moment. So she's not losing the movement and she's not losing the shape, but she's given a little bit extra. And it sounds a little bit like that, where you don't need a tap on the wither because you're innately changing things microscopically for your horse, or indeed actually giving a stretch. But yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
I wanted to, Mia, if it's okay, go back a bit, because this is a bit selfish, maybe, but I have definitely not had the same education as you have had, and I unfortunately ended up in very much like it's like you and I are like Mo and Boogie in some ways, like you had like a similar sort of like. Didn't have a horsey family, had to kind of fight my way to get to having a pony. My aunt, weirdly, also was the person who led me to horses, which I think is
That's so
weird.
funny.
Yeah, literally. But what I didn't get first was the connection. I got taught about force only. That was it. I just met people that just blindfolded them after they had given them an awful time in the arena to make them remember. You know,
Oh my God.
oh, we can't make sure. Yeah. Oh God, that was tame. It was awful. I met awful things, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the I have now, because of Blondie, actually come to realize how I kind of learnt horsemanshipy stuff. I learnt the TRT way through Tristan, through Claire, which has absolutely changed my life. I am obviously a fairly successful trainer of horses now. But the bit before that was the bit that I never learned, the bit about the connection. And I think it's because I've also lived a life very disconnected from myself. Although I feel my feelings and I'm very sensitive and emotional person, I haven't got like I'm not very regulated, and I'm learning about that. But I wondered I wondered if you could help other people, because no doubt there are lots of people who are like me, who kind of have fairly well functioning relationships with their horses, but they maybe are feeling like they're missing that kind of mind to mind connection.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you touch on this? Like, how can we nurture it? I believe everybody can have this, but where does it start?
Well, the way horses communicate, they are masters of thoughts, intentions, energy, and body language. Like, that is how they communicate. And it's really making sure everything we do, we start with our thoughts. Then our intention, like, what is our intention with this thought? Also sending positive feeling with this ask, say, or suggestion. Then our energy shifts to kind of say, like, come on, we need more energy to do this, or I'm going to assert my energy a bit more, or project my energy here to the shoulder that needs to move, or and then your body changes. So breaking it down, and similar, when you say ask your horse to move their shoulder, let's use that one, there's like degrees of which where the horse's mind has to go, okay, yes, I'm going to move my shoulder. Then their flexion, so they kind of set their body up, changes. Then the weight, and then the feet. And in early horsemanship days, we all just release when the feet do the right thing. And eventually you can release like when you can see that their mind has started to go that way, and then they perform the movement and you haven't even had to do anything. And then the horse is like, oh, okay, you're really reading my mind. And I guess it's being able to read those like very subtle changes in behavior of what happens before what happens, and releasing sooner, or rewarding that thought. But also I love the whole thing around ears, like little radar for where the horse's mind is at. So I'm sure you'll see often with Liberty and bridleless riding, horses' ears are often like back. And I know there's the whole thing like, oh, their ears are back, they're unhappy. Look at the whole picture, number one. And oftentimes that's like concentration from a horse. So, or they're thinking back into their bodies as well. So say if, like I've asked Boogie to do something, he's done a really good job, I've rewarded, now I wait. And I wait for him to process. And sometimes he drops into deep subconscious processing, which is that state that's really similar to REM. It's also that state that it is just memory processing. But that's when their ears are go to the side or back, their eyes are half shut, the lips and the muzzle are twitching, they get some big head twitches, and then they come through that with a release, like a sigh, a lick and a chew, a blowout. That's dishwasher cycle complete. They've thought about it and got it, and really processed whatever you just did with them. And that, I think, is some really powerful stuff. So I'm going off on a tangent. Going back to the mind, is the ears. The ears are just being aware of where their mind is at. So when you're on the ground with them, if they get distracted or fixate elsewhere, what can you do in yourself to just bring them back into the room without pulling on the head collar? So can you just step half a step away from them? Does their inside ear flick back to you? If it doesn't, how many steps around the horse do you have to do until their mind comes back to you? And sometimes you can walk away and they're still looking in the opposite direction when there's no physical attachment. So, and that shows that your horse is not thinking about you in any way, shape or form. They're thinking about whatever else is going on. So just this awareness of the ear is the mind. Then the flexion is fairly obvious because they're bending around you. Then the weight, then the feet, obviously. So it all starts with the mind always. And I think in early horsemanship days, we're looking at the feet. We're clunky, we're learning. The feet are really obvious. Okay, there, they've done it. Now release, now reward, whatever. But actually, there's so many steps before that.
I look forward to clearing my intentions and maybe thinking about what I do before I do it, because I do think that has been, for me personally, I've become quite kind of uniform, I suppose, about the way that I do things maybe, and I'm it is quite a lot about the feet, and it's quite a lot about just physical movement patterns, and I'm probably maybe connecting with the mind more than I think I am, but I'm not necessarily very present with it myself. And I think that presence is so key, right?
I think if you do your movement patterns at liberty, you'll then see how aware you'll be of the mind then.
Yeah. I saw an amazing video. There's a lady called Nadine Lindenbloom. Have you heard of her?
Love her. Yeah. Love. She's a great blender of negative and positive reinforcement. Yeah.
And she often will post these videos of her horses just kind of coming to her and doing these amazing things. But then she posted a video the other day with her mare, and she had her in a cavesson, with a lunge line, a rope clipped on the front of her nose. And she demonstrated doing something to the horse, showing her what to do. And this, I think, Rhi, for you is really relevant, because Rhi and I have been working together, but Harley, Rhi's horse, is quite quick to switch off. He's I don't like this intention, I'm going to check out. And this horse did exactly that. She asked her to do something. She kind of told her to do something, to yield her hind end, I think it was. And this horse was no, absolutely not interested in this whatsoever. You didn't ask, you told me what to do, and I am out. She checked out. This horse just put herself into park and was not interested. And what she said, if you are going to use a physical connection, you must pretend like you don't have one.
Yes.
Oh,
exactly.
I love that.
Play online as if you're at liberty.
Exactly. My horses have been off their tits since they've been here, right? Since we moved. They're oh my God, the world has ended. We don't know what to do with ourselves. But all of what I'm trying to do is now to be I can't let them be free in the arena, because I do think they might jump back out and go back into the yard at this point, because they're, a couple of them have been really dysregulated. But what I've been trying to do is have the rope halter, but be but can you, it's my body, come with my body, come with me. And it's been so interesting, just that little shift in my head to be I'm just going to pretend I don't have the rope halter and see whether they can come with me.
I love this so much, because what I keep hearing throughout this conversation is things are changing all the time. There is no hard and fast rule. And so it's mostly about what can you see in front of you in your horse. I'm going to go on a tangent for a second, and then I'm going to come back to this. I was driving my car the other day, and my Google Maps was you can't go down this road. You need to turn right because there's roadworks. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot the roadworks are there. And I was driving down this road, and I kid you not, I literally went to turn right at the roundabout and then looked straight ahead and was like, oh, the roadworks are gone. And I hadn't even looked at the road in front of me because I was so busy following my sat nav. And that for me is such a good metaphor for my experience sometimes with learning about positive reinforcement and natural horsemanship. Is I'm so busy trying to follow the thing that I've learnt that I don't look at the horse in front of me. And like some of the stuff is so obvious, like what you just said about liberty, doing it at liberty. Like my horse hates to be moved around him, like he hates to have the rope moved and you pushing on his body to turn the hind end and whatever. If you do it without touching him and I just move my hand towards him, he will offer it all. And it's so funny to like be like, part of me would have been like, oh, that's not the right way to do it, but he's like, this is how I want to do it. And it's just very interesting.
And ultimately you have to know the rules to break them. And when you're learning, I think it's really important that you do stick to like one thing that you're learning and like learn that process, know it as in its entirety, like as fully as you can. So if that is pure positive reinforcement, do it and do it to the nth degree, and then do the same thing with another one, and then do the same thing with another one. And then when you really understand all these different ways, it's really easy to blend and like adapt to fit the horse that needs it. But initially, I think if people do jump around a bit too much, then there's lack of clarity, there's then loads of conflict in the human. It's really hard for the horse then, because you could teach your horse to canter by biting its left ear. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's crazy what your A's or Q's could be. As long as you have this, like, this is the intent, and like their energy behind your intent is like, this is what I mean. The horse reads it. They know. They're masters. They are designed by nature to read a predator's thoughts and intentions. So luckily for us, they see everything that we do. They feel everything we feel. I'm like a highly perceptive, spooky, flighty horse, and I notice everything around me all the time. So I've noticed like 5 minutes before everyone else that there's a tractor coming, but it doesn't change anything in me, but I'm aware. And I spotted what that horse spooked at that no one else could see. And I could see the spook about to happen 10 strides before it happened. And it's, unfortunately, being like that hyper aware is a blessing and a curse. And I think, Miri, you're quite similar in this way, because it's amazing for working horses, and particularly multiple horses. But then you get really overstimulated in, like, I had to go into Tesco and it was really busy, and I was like, oh God, this is really pushing my limits. And then the minute I'm back outside, I'm like, oh my God, I'm fine. This is fine again. So it's, I could feel it come up in me. But and I guess it's being able to be aware of this stuff, but it not change your emotional state and not be like, oh my God, there's a tractor coming and my horse might do this. And it's like being totally confident that you know what to do in that situation and you know how to help your horse. So you can be confident, and therefore you don't need to change your emotional state about the tractor coming down the lane.
Love it. Okay, so to maybe close out our conversation, by the way, this hour has gone so fast. I mean, sometimes our interviews go fast, but this one, it feels like I've blinked and it's gone by. I think we should talk about the upcoming Bridleless competition.
Yeah. So the British Bridleless competition has come about because I've obviously started competing Bridleless with my horse Boogie. And I cannot tell you how hard it was to get anyone to let me. So our local riding club to here ran an any tack class, and it was just prelim 3. And I sent her like this huge message with photos and proof of my insurance and videos of me and Boogie riding bridleless in these crazy country shows where there's like a bagpipe band and a fun fair and a horse boarding and like craziness going on. And I'm like, okay, he's this safe. Like, please, can I come to your little dressage competition and compete bridleless? And she was like, yeah, all right. So turned up, did that. That kind of blew up. And I was like, wow, okay. And it was just a prelim 3. I was super happy with him. And then I think I've competed there now 6 times, and I've won the Winter League, whatever it is, of doing it.
Just to interject, do you know how lovely that is? Because normally when you hear any tack, it's because people are like, I can't do dressage without a martingale. I can't do dressage without
a tom thumb.
But it's not BD legal.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's so nice that you read that and were like, any tack? None.
So yeah,
just so nice. I love that.
So that's where it started. And then I know Kerry, who runs the dressage at Western Lawns, from helping her with one of her dressage horses with a few behavioural issues years ago. So Kerry was like, you can come do it at Western Lawns. And I was like, great, that's 4 hours away for me now, but used to be my local place. But me and Serena went to that one together. I've now been to Western Lawns a couple of times, done prelim 6 and novice 5, I think, for those. And we both got like above of 69%, which is amazing. And that has blown up as well. And then any other venue I inquired about to compete bridleless, I just don't get a response. I get no reply. And you would not believe the amount of closed doors I get asking about anything we do. People are just like, no. Or it's just like, we don't do that here. And I'm like, okay, sorry, I won't ask again. And then I'm terrible at organising things, and I'm awful with admin, and I'm very open about that so that no one has any expectations on me, because I'm horrendous. I think I have like 500 calls and 300 texts or something, and then there's WhatsApp and emails and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I tried to put a bit of committee together, and in the end, I've just gone ahead and organised it. So luckily, I've got a wonderful friend who worked for Howden Insurance. And obviously, the first thing we had to do was get insurance, and then we could get a venue. So Howden are insuring the day. I've got a million risk assessments in place. Ultimately, I'm deciding who is safe to compete and who is not. I then also realised the gravitas of the situation, because if something goes wrong, ain't no hell are any of us going to be insured to ride bridleless anymore. And I really like riding bridleless. So I was like, oh my God, okay, we cannot. It has to be safe and seamless, especially this first time. So Howden are insuring it. I'm kind of taking in and assessing applications, and people need to video themselves doing the class they want to compete in, and then show 3 ways they can stop their horse in an emergency. So, and if they can do that, they can enter and totally compete at the competition. But it's just making sure it is safe. And in the warm-up, everyone has to warm up with something with reins. So a bitless bridle, a rope halter, a normal bridle, it doesn't matter. And then one person at a time will be bridleless in the main arena. So that's just keeping it together. It's on the 31st of May at Meristwood, so in Guildford, about an hour from London. And Meristwood know us quite well. We've had our Christmas shows there now for 2 years on the run, so they know the crazy stuff we do. So they've been amazing to allow it as well. And now Horse and Hound are going to be reporting on the day. Horse and Country TV are also filming it. So they're live streaming it on the day, and they're going to send a reporter as well. We're having some huge companies kind of come out the works here wanting to sponsor it. And I'm so bloody glad I just stuck to dressage and show jumping, because, oh my God, trying to organise this is crazy when, you know, we've got all our horses, loads of other events, clinics, training horses, admin that I am still putting off to do with my own company. You know, it's a huge reach for me doing this, and I've never run a competition, and I don't have a huge amount of experience competing, really. Like, I did working equitation and I've done some dressage. That's it.
But you've done it, and how fantastic for those companies to come out and support you and show how many people, even people who can't ride or don't feel comfortable riding bridleless, they are interested and they want to watch.
Yeah.
I do think it's worth plugging for you that you are allowed to spectate, but you must buy a ticket because Merriswood is only so big.
Exactly.
And I also, I mean, I would love to come and volunteer if you need a volunteer.
That would actually be amazing.
About that. And
yes, please.
Great. And would you like any applications for other volunteers from anybody listening if they're local, or is that too much?
For sure. They can email it in to the British Bridleless competition. We've got a rough website up. As you've probably seen, like the reels on Instagram and Facebook have gone wild, and we had such a huge amount of interest because I was like, yeah, open daytime spectating is open for anyone. And then after all this amazing kind of excitement, I was like, oh my God, there's only 400 seats. I was like, oh my God, we have to ticket this because what if 10,000 people show up on the day? I had an email this morning. A lady is coming from America to watch. I was like, oh, wow. Amazing. Okay. So then...
Well, Horse and Country will also make that easier because you'll be able to... There'll be people who will be able to watch it on the live stream, which is going to help.
Exactly.
But yes, I'm definitely coming to help.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I think that this is one of those moments, Mia, where as a business person who is very similar to you, does way too many things for one person, is to just remember that you've just got to delegate. You've got to just do a lot of delegation. If you're not good at something, that is okay. You're not meant to be good at it because you're bloody amazing at like 100 other things. So if you're not good at admin, stop trying to do it. It'll give you a headache. Give it to someone who likes to be like that, because I am very type B. So like remade the spreadsheet for the podcast because that would have sent me into a coma. I don't even bother trying. But
I literally was about to say, like, would you need help with the admin? Because I could probably do a bit of that. And there will be type A people listening who may not be able to volunteer on the day, but they might be able to do something else. And I don't know if that's opening a can of worms, but you know.
Yeah, love it. I'll take as much help as we can. Yeah. Well, and like the biggest thing that keeps coming up with this is people are tagging the FEI constantly in these comments. Like the last one, I was like, oh, the FEI has been tagged about 20 times. And I think that's really interesting because of what's going on in the sport at the moment. And don't get me wrong, I've also seen bridleless riding where people have spurs put in the neck rope. It's called a spur collar, where it can still be done in a way that is not really horse first, let's say. It's very results orientated. And, you know, where the neck rope sits, there aren't many nerve endings. It's some huge musculature and their shoulders, and it's where we put a driving collar. So horses do push into that. So if you've ever ridden a horse on the neck rope and you pull, but often the first time they just pull back and lean into that pressure. So you have to really teach them to like come up and off of it, because it's almost innate that they push into it there. Whereas on the face, like there are thousands of nerve endings on the nose and in the mouth, and we put a piece of metal in the most sensitive area, and even like the nicest leather side pull is still putting pressure on the most sensitive area on the horse. So you know, there is argument that once a horse understands how to yield and you know, be light off the neck rope, it's so much higher horse welfare, and they can put themselves in whatever posture they feel they need to be. All right, yes, we're trying to reinforce a certain type of posture, but I've been having this huge debate recently where horses, like I've recently put our colts out into my main herd, which has been a bit chaotic, but they posture themselves when they're playing, when they're challenging another horse, and they kind of dance around in this amazing posture, like passaging, all lifted and in, like, you know, it'd be a 10 for passage in a Grand Prix test, but they only hold it for maybe maximum 10 strides, and then their shape changes to a stretch, or then they're above, and then they've moved, and then it's a different movement. So we're expecting them to hold this perfect posture for, like, how long is a Grand Prix test? Like 10 minutes? It's quite long.
It's pretty long.
Yeah. For that amount of time, and all right, they've got a walk on a long rein, but maybe we need to change up what we're looking for. I don't know, in posture. I guess it is healthy biomechanics, yes, when your horse is there, but yeah,
I feel we could speak all day.
yes.
Perhaps a part two.
Maybe
Yes.
a part 2 should come, because I feel like there's so much more that we could talk about. But I just
There is.
wondered if we could round off this podcast in the way that we normally do, and is to just answer this question for me, Mia,
Okay.
to kind of summarise maybe. But if you had one thing that you could say to all equestrians, and they had to listen, and, like, as in they had to do the thing that you're suggesting,
Ooh.
what would you say?
Oh, I've got a few.
Take your time.
Oh, so I would say knowledge is power, and educate yourself. And with that, don't stagnate, and don't get fixed, and don't just believe what a 1950s textbook says. Sorry.
No, I love it.
The horses will teach you, but ultimately we have access to so much knowledge now. Just get out there and be a sponge and learn as much as you can, because the more you know, the better you're going to be for your horse ultimately.
Mia, thank you so much for giving us your time
Thank
today.
you, guys.
I feel like you are wiser than your years, and got the most bright, amazing future ahead of you and your horses.
Oh,
Like,
thank you, Miri.
just what an inspiration you are.
This has
That's
been
really, really
wonderful.
kind.
I
Thank
already
you, guys.
have part 2 questions.
Great. Let's do it.
I
Part
can't
2
wait
it
to see
is.
the competition.
Yeah. And thank
Yeah,
you.
love
Thank
it.
you both
Thank
for
you.
doing this and putting this podcast on and sharing curiosity, inspiration and knowledge to, like, the greater equestrian world, because I am, like, a podcast person totally, and you can learn so much, and it can spark so much, you know, just from sowing seeds like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Gosh, that was just such an inspiring conversation. Mia is no longer with us, but we just wanted to kind of round up. I feel so inspired. I know I just said inspired, but I just feel like she reminded me how important learning is. And for me, I've spent a really long time being kind of stuck in this place where I couldn't really make progression. And actually, since I've moved, I've really been re-inspired to teach, and those sort of things are really kind of, I'm like blooming again, which feels really good. But yeah, she really reminded me how much I enjoy learning, and how she has had this amazing education. Like, some of the places, the people she has learnt from, I'm like, I've got some catching up to do, which was a really cool thing. What was your sort of take on the conversation? Because it was certainly a very interesting one.
Yeah, blooming. I love that word. I think I've just really enjoyed. I was really looking forward to the Mia episode ever since we kind of locked her in, and I just enjoy meeting all these people who are learning in different ways and are teaching us that learning doesn't have to be linear, and that there's lots of ways into things. And particularly when it comes to, like, the future of the sport and what is possible, and pushing the boundaries of, like, what is possible, because I think a few years ago, perhaps we would have been like, oh yeah, you can play without a bit at home, or you can play without a bridle at home, but you know, you wouldn't go out without one. And now we're in the stage where it's like, oh, actually we can blend a bit of dressage and competing, and really cool too to see companies like Meristwood, like Horse and Country, backing these new endeavours and standing with them. I feel really proud of Meristwood, even though I have no connection to it, just because it's a local venue, and I'm really excited. I'm so excited to go and watch that competition and to get a little sense of how it's been set up from a safety point of view has been really interesting. So
for sure. 100%. As we said before, all of the details about the British Bridleless competition and what Mia does will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, guys. We are so excited for the rest of the season, and we will see you for next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.